Alright, so in this brand new update, Tycoon has decided to add in the Independence X. I know, it's a pretty weird name, however today I'm going to be going through this vehicle's advantages and disadvantages and really telling you is this vehicle truly worth its insane amount of 2,500 Robux. But before we begin, I'd like to quickly cover its base stats. It's going to be 43 for speed and 5.8k in terms of health. When you max it out, it's gonna have 55 speed and 7,540 health. That is definitely pretty high, but it's still behind the Zoom World, which was recently buffed. I'll be covering that tomorrow. But before we start, make sure to join the Discord, the link is in the description. So firstly, taking a look at this vehicle's main weaponry, which is going to be the Railgun, and the way in which it works is it basically charges up for a set amount of time and then it fires at its target. Firstly, against the F-35, it will be able to do very well because it will be able to one-tap it. With this, it can pretty much do exactly the same thing against the Superhind, which in my opinion is actually a very good start in terms of its weaponry. However, the only issue is, if you miss, you do have to recharge, so it can actually be kind of hard to play with this. However, the only thing that really sucks is once I did test it against the V-22 Osprey, unfortunately enough, it will not be able to one-tap it, but it will probably be leaving it at very low health. So if the Osprey is battle damaged, you're most likely also going to be able to counter it, which is really good news to be honest. Everyone hates this thing a lot. Now, in terms of its anti-tank capabilities, this thing will also be very good because it will be able to do exactly 53% per shot to the Abrams X, meaning that the second shot will fortunately enough actually be able to kill it, which is good news. This thing's definitely going to be good against tanks. However, some of its other weaponry in terms of these capabilities might just fall off a little bit. Either way, this is still a great start once again. And once again, another set of good news for the people which are buying it is going to be the fact that it can actually one-tap a Boxer CRV, which means on average, you're probably going to be one-tapping every single ground vehicle in the game if they do come in your sight. So do keep that in mind. But now taking a look at its damage against hovercrafts. In terms of the starter hovercrafts, it will be able to pretty much one-tap every single one of them. So if you are actually accurate with this, then that's going to be very good. However, against something like the Overlord, it will probably not be this good because it will only be able to do exactly 38% per hit, meaning that on average it's going to be able to free tap it. This is going to be kind of problematic since you're not going to be hitting every single shot. However, you can combine the DPS with the ground missiles, which actually can lock onto hovercrafts. So you do have to keep in mind that you have to play very strategically and you need to have decent aim to actually be able to take this thing down. So it's definitely going to be a pretty good counter to it, honestly. So in terms of its anti-ship capabilities against something like the USS Independence, one railgun shot will be able to do exactly 28%, which means that on average you guys are probably going to be taking around 4 hits or 5 hits to actually be able to kill it. You do have to keep in mind that in this clip, my friend was actually healing after the first shot, so it will be taking him a few extra shots to actually get killed. Either way, this thing will be decent against ships. However, the issue is that the DPS will be coming in very slowly and you're more reliably going to be doing damage with something else, which I'll be showing you in a second. And now lastly, moving into its damage against the submarines, and unfortunately enough, it will not be able to one-tap the Los Angeles class, which is kind of annoying considering the fact you're only going to be seeing these things once and you're probably only going to get one opportunity to take them down. Well, fortunately enough, you will be having the torpedoes for that, but it just simply won't be able to one-tap. Now moving into this vehicle's anti-air capabilities, and this is where things do get pretty interesting. The stats seem to actually be copied from the USS Independence, and it's gonna be able to kill the F-35, which is maxed out at exactly 4 hits, which is actually pretty good. However, against something like the Superhind, the damage will be going up to exactly 3 hits. Of course, you have to keep in mind that these missiles will be taking some time to travel to the enemy, and the enemy can actually flare your missiles, but then again, you do have some other weaponry, such as your railgun, which will be able to one-tap these vehicles. So you basically have 2 opportunities to take them down, which is definitely pretty good. But by the way, before we continue this video, I would like to give a huge shout out to Meowser Pro for actually helping me out with this damage test. Make sure to subscribe to him. I'll leave a link to him in the description. Now moving into the anti-tank missiles, and oh man, I have to say those are pretty mediocre and disappointing, going to be able to do only 10% on average to the Abrams X, and keep in mind that the APS exists. I'm just going to be saying that these missiles are going to be useless against ground vehicles and tanks for for both reasons of them having a weird shooting trajectory, but also the fact that they just simply don't do too much damage. And now moving into the damage against the Overlord, and the situation is exactly the same. Those missiles will be very mediocre against it, only being able to do 7 per hit, and APS and smoke exists on it, so the missiles are pretty much gonna be kind of useless against it, really. Like, even against a level 0 Boxer, the situation will be exactly the same. I have to say, this will be one of the weaponry which really won't be that good. Maybe it will be decent against the ships. Let's take a look. And, well, seems like I was right. Against the USS Independence, this thing will be able to do exactly 3%. So, this is a pretty huge problem. The torpedoes really have to make up for that damage, or else this vehicle really won't be that good in terms of ship combat. This is definitely not the best bonus DPS, I have to say. Now, the next thing we're going to be testing is going to be the artillery rockets, which basically copy the stats of the TOS Buratino. The way in which I'm going to be testing the AoE / area damage of this vehicle is going to be by basically having my friend on one side of a wall, and I'm going to be shooting on the other side. So right here, I'm basically trying to get closer and closer, and once I do actually manage to hit him, it's going to be doing around 50 damage on the first hit, and that's going to be the lowest possible damage you guys will be able to achieve, and roughly this is going to be the AoE that this vehicle will be able to do. It's actually really good. It might be really good against killing people which are in pretty fortified positions. Now, in terms of the damage against the Abrams X, this thing will be able to do exactly 15% per hit. However, once again, once you're going to be fighting tanks, you do have to keep in mind that the AoE is going to be doing the main damage, so do expect to actually be doing a lot less. However, this vehicle is really good in terms of being able to take down tanks or really vehicles which are hiding behind walls, just because of the fact that you do have this artillery. It does fix a problem which the ships have had for a very long time. And the situation does remain pretty similar against something like the Boxer CRV, as you guys are clearly seeing. However, once again, the damage will be kind of inconsistent, as you guys can also see against something like the Overlord. Some hits are doing more damage than the other, and that's just simply because of how the explosive damage just spreads in this game and where I'm actually hitting my shots. So this will be a pretty interesting weaponry. It will definitely be making this vehicle a lot more versatile. Now, lastly, these rockets will actually do really good damage against ships, so if you guys manage to get close to the enemy, then you can really shred them really easily with these rockets. It might be this vehicle's best DPS in terms of ship combat. I honestly really like it for this reason. Now, lastly, moving into the torpedoes, and this is in my opinion where things do become a little more disappointing once again. Unfortunately enough, after hitting the opponent with pretty much every single one, the Independence will actually be only losing around 40% of their HP, which is pretty insane in my opinion. However, there is one thing which was mentioned in the update log, and that was that all the torpedoes in the game were nerfed, and that's actually a very fair point, to be honest. I do believe the torpedoes were too OP since you really couldn't counter them in any way. However, either way, this vehicle is at a disadvantage because of this nerf. Now, lastly, moving into its anti-submarine capabilities, and to be fully real with you, it will be taking exactly 7 of these torpedoes to take down a USS Los Angeles, which is actually not too good. I would more likely be using these torpedoes to actually find out where the enemy actually is. This will definitely be a decent counter against submarines, but it will not be anything too special. So I feel like this vehicle is definitely going to be needing some buffs in terms of its torpedoes for the future, because the nerfs seem to be a little bit too big. Anyway, the last fun fact which I also have about this vehicle is that you do have to keep in mind that it's going to be very good for fighting enemies at night. If you're just blasting people from a very large distance and they simply will probably not be able to see you a lot of the time until they actually look properly around every single side, since you do actually camouflage pretty well with the environment because of your camo. But yeah, for the time being, that's pretty much going to be everything for this vehicle. I honestly believe that it's definitely going to be either the best or the second best ship in the game, but it's 100% not going to be worth the investment, and it really is just a jack of all trades. It does fix a lot of the issues which the Independence and the Zumwalt had. However, unfortunately enough, it's gonna be a master of none, to be totally honest with you. Probably not worth the price, so I do not recommend you guys to buy it. It's still OP, but like I said, not worth it. Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Do let me know in the comment section down below what you think about this pay-to-play vehicle. Honestly, it doesn't feel too pay-to-win from what we're seeing in this video. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much to all my channel members.